Hey everybody, I am going to be gone today. I have to take my granddaughter to her doctor's appointment today. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be here. I will be here this afternoon. So if at any point in time you guys have any questions about anything that we've talked about today, please don't hesitate to come see me during guided study. Okay, let's start off first of all, please. If you guys go into Schoology, take a look at today's folder. I want to go over our objective, our activity, and our homework for today. So your objective is, after a lab and a sim activity, the student will be able to explain how organisms obtain the energy needed for reproduction. So after we get finished today, you will be able to answer that question. We're only really going to focus on one activity or one lesson in Amplify today. And so that's populations and resources. We're going to be in 2.2. We're going to do all the activities today, 1 through 5. Now, you have to complete the yeast experiment. So if you are absent today, and I'm not talking about the e-learners, but if you are absent today and you're watching this video because you want to get caught up with what you missed, you still need to come in and arrange for you and I to work together so that you can get this lab finished. Okay. We could work after school or maybe during a guided study, but if you are absent today, if you're watching this video because you're sick or because for whatever reason you're not in class, you need to schedule a time with me to make up this lab. E-learners will do it online, and that's totally fine. Okay, or not online, but we'll do it on this video. You guys, you will have homework today. We're going to complete the activity in Amplify 2.2.5, activity number 5. I'm going to show that to you real quick. If you log on to Amplify and you're logging in, we're going to go to Population and Resources. We're in Chapter 2, Lesson 2. I'm going to go ahead and skip over here to activity number 5. It's the homework. And I'm going to zoom in here. You guys will have to follow the directions. It says right here, watch the crickets and energy storage molecules video in the digital resources, and then return back to Amplify on this activity to answer these 2 questions. So I want to remind you where your digital resources, where you can find this video. So come on back up here. Look at the very top, click out right here where it says lesson 2.2, click that. It's going to take you back to the very front page for the overview of lesson 2.2. Now mine looks different. I know your student screen looks a little different, but find where it says digital resources and you'll see a video right here, crickets and energy storage molecules. It's just a couple minutes. I want you guys to watch the video. Then you'll go back to activity number 5 and do the homework. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and start our presentation. You guys should be in Amplify 2.2, energy storage molecules. I'm going to go ahead and have you do the warm-up activity. The warm-up activity, if you'll remember last time we saw each other, we read the packets of articles that talked about how different organisms, different consumer populations received their energy, and the relationship between energy and reproduction. So we've got this little excerpt here. I'm going to let you guys read that and then go ahead and answer the question, what do organisms need in order to reproduce? Mrs. Thomas, I'm going to have you stop the video when the students are ready to move on. Maybe you guys can kind of talk about this. While they are answering the question, Mrs. Thomas, if you would plug in the coffee pot so that the water will get warm, and then that needs to be plugged in for no more than probably 20 minutes. And then you can go ahead and unplug it so that it doesn't get too hot for our lab. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and complete the warm-up. Okay, so let's talk about what organisms need in order to reproduce. Hopefully you guys wrote some things and were able to talk. I'm hoping you guys were able to have a conversation. Based on what we read in those articles, you should have identified that organisms need energy in order to reproduce. More specifically, I'd like you guys to think back to the articles. What specifically do they need? They need energy. Where do they get that energy from? And they get it from their food. And what did we learn? We learned about energy storage molecules. We call them ESMs. And we learned that there are 3 kinds. And so if you can remember, we learned about fat, glucose, and starch. I've got a vocabulary for you. Let's go ahead and go into GoodNotes, please. And an energy storage molecule, ESM, is a molecule that organisms can use to release the energy they need to survive. I went ahead and I added the 3 examples that we've talked about: fat, starch, and glucose. Go ahead and pause this. When you're ready to move on, you can go ahead and start again. So based on our reading, we've got a key concept. I want you to think about what I'm going to say before you start writing. Think about it. It totally makes sense. Organisms need, this is key concept number 5. Organisms need to release energy from energy storage molecules, or ESMs, in order to reproduce. Doesn't that make sense? An organism needs, we read about the penguins, we read about the elephant seals, we read about the lightning bugs, but that's not what they're called. I can't remember what we called them. Fireflies. We learned about the fireflies and we learned about the penguins. Organisms need to release energy from energy storage molecules in order to reproduce. Remember, they have lots of activities that require energy, not just reproducing, traveling. Maybe they have to battle or fight another male for dominance. They have to feed themselves. They have to feed their young. Maybe they have to keep their eggs warm. So there's lots of different things that they need energy from. So I'll let you go ahead and finish writing that, and then you can go ahead and start again when you're ready. Okay, I'm really sorry. I may confuse you for a minute, so listen to me very carefully. There was one activity that we didn't get to last time we met. I would like you to go back to 2.1 and let's go to the activity number 4, which is the homework. Okay, go back to populations and resources, 2.1.4, which is the homework. And I'm going to show you what we're going to do. So if you're here, you're just going to come back to chapter 2, go to lesson number 1, and I want you guys to go right here to the homework activity. So first of all, please don't click this link. If you remember, we had to download the app. You guys have the app downloaded. You should have that. I want you to use that one instead. This one is super glitchy and I don't understand. But what we're going to do is I'd like you guys to do a little bit of investigating in the sim. And I want to come back over here to my presentation to kind of explain what you're going to see. Okay, let's go ahead, if you would please, and open up your app for populations and resources. And you are going to use the mode in the middle here called 3 populations. Okay, so go ahead and click on that. And in this mode, you're going to notice that each one of those organisms has a tank full of this orange substance. And that represents each organism's energy storage molecule. I think it looks like a battery. So just watch that for a second. You're going to see all your little organisms. You've got your green leaves, you've got your wee bugs, you've got your furbills, and they're running around doing things. And you're witnessing, you're looking at these energy storage molecules. The level of the orange inside of them is going up and down. So if you can press on an organism, go ahead and do that now. You're going to see that a window will pop up, and that has information about the organism's level of ESMs. So if you look at it, you can see that there's a number in orange. It's going to be increasing or decreasing, and that coincides with this right here where it says that it's increasing or decreasing. You also will be able to see what activity that organism is engaged in. So maybe it's eating, maybe it's mating, reproducing. It could be dying. If it's going from point A to point B and it's just kind of walking around, you're just going to see dot, dot, dot. Okay. If anybody is having trouble with this, raise your hand. Mrs. Thomas will pause the video, and then maybe a neighbor can help you. The last thing I want you to look at is across the top, you can see there's a tracking activity menu. If you click on that, you get a drop-down box, and it allows you to click on the activity that the organism is engaged in. So if you click on eating, it's only going to highlight those organisms that are eating. And if you click on reproducing or dying, then it just highlights those organisms. So it just kind of helps you pull out the ones that you really want to look at. All right. So here's what we're going to do. If you would please just put your iPads down for a minute and pay attention. Look up here. For this activity, you're going to use the sim to gather evidence about what happens to an organism's energy storage molecules when they do certain things. So you're in the app right now. I'd like you to go back to Amplify and take a look at the directions. Remember, we're in 2.1, activity number 4. So here's what you're going to do. Number 1, it says launch the populations and resources simulation. So just get back on your app like what you were. Make sure that you are in the 3 populations mode. It says select an animal and follow it until it reproduces. So don't choose a green leaf for this one. Don't choose the green leaf organisms. Choose either a furbill or a wee bug and follow it until it reproduces. Focus on what happens to its energy storage molecules when it reproduces. What happens to that energy storage molecule? What happens to the orange level? Okay. If you're having a hard time, sometimes when we were picking these, you'd pick one and you'd follow it all around and then it got eaten, or maybe it never reproduced. It just kind of wandered around, ate, and then died. So if you're having a hard time finding one that's reproducing, don't forget you can click on that tracking activity menu to select organisms that are reproducing. So do that for one animal. And then it says follow at least 2 more animals and observe what happens to their energy storage molecules when they reproduce. Note, you can observe the animal's energy storage tank as well as the animal's pop-up indicator. So you can either visually look to see what's happening to the level of orange or look at the black label that's above the organism. One thing that I noticed in the app when we were working on this in periods 1, 3, and 4 is sometimes it won't let you click on the organism. You just physically cannot click on it. If that's the case, then see if you can find somebody who is who's able to do that, and maybe they can project real quick and then bring me back on. Okay, Mrs. Thomas, go ahead and allow maybe 5 minutes for this activity. And during this time, if you haven't yet already, it would be maybe a good time for you to unplug the coffee pot to make sure that the water doesn't get too hot. It should cool off just a little bit before you guys do the lab. All right, go ahead and pause this and come on back when you're ready. Okay, so you guys had a chance to work the simulation. I just want you to kind of maybe talk to Miss Thomas, explain to her when an organism reproduced in the sim, what happened to its energy storage molecules? I'm hoping that you all saw, whether you were looking at the actual canister or if you were looking at the black plaque, I guess, I don't even know, sign, whatever, that was above the animal, the energy storage molecules decreased, and not just by a little, it decreased substantially. There was a huge drop in ESMs. If you watched it, you would notice probably that the organism reproduced and then it immediately went and got something to eat in order to get those energy storage molecules up. You may have noticed too that your organism reproduced and then just sort of walked around and then died. That could happen too because it didn't have enough energy storage molecules to continue living. So crazy, right? Let's talk about energy storage molecules. I'm going to move my face. I guess I'm okay. All right. So the other day when we were reading, we talked about what energy storage molecules mean for us. I'm going to tell you right now, Miss Thomas, you are really good about nutrition. And if there's anything you want to add here that I haven't, please feel free to pause the video and talk about this with the kids. But real quick, energy storage molecules, we talked about sugars, glucose, starch, and fat, but I wanted to show you this word right here. I'm sure you're familiar with this word, carbohydrates or carbs. So carbohydrates include sugars like glucose and starch, and you can find these in these types of food. So sugar, glucose, fructose is found in fruits and vegetables. This is a natural sugar, and this sugar is one where the chemical structure of the molecules that make up that sugar is relatively easy for our bodies to digest, to break apart, to break down, and use for energy. Now, if you have a lot of sugar in your diet, that's the white sugar or the refined sugar, high fructose corn syrup, the molecular structure for those foods are different, and it's a little bit harder for our bodies to break those down. And those are the energy storage molecules that our body would tend to kind of hang on to a little bit more. And so if you're talking about sugars, foods that are high in sugar or high in corn syrup, not very good for us, not very good at all. We tend to hang on to those. Also over here with the starches, you'll notice that we have the grains. We talked about this the other day. Grains, starches being potatoes. There's all different kinds of variety of potatoes. There's white potatoes like russet potatoes. There's sweet potatoes. And the sweet potatoes tend to have a little bit easier time. Our bodies have an easier time breaking those apart as well. Whereas maybe some of the other higher starchy potatoes, we kind of hang on to those energy storage molecules. It's better for you to have whole grain pasta, whole grain bread. These little piles are called legumes. Beans are a part of that group. So like black beans, garbanzo beans. We've got nuts and different rices, your long grain rice, brown rice. The white, like also flour would be considered a part of this as starch. So your refined flour, like your white flour, all-purpose white flour is probably not the best. You should probably, I mean, we use it, but what I'm saying, it's harder for your body to break that down. So we've got starch, we've got glucose, and then we have fats. And fats are any kind of an oil. So there's olive oil, there's avocado oil, there's also butter. Now, something that's more of a synthetic, like margarine, is not a natural food source at all. That's high in fat or can be high in fat. And again, that's really hard for your body to break down. I had a biology professor that told me one time that margarine, the chemical structure for margarine is not that far off from plastic. How gross is that? So yeah, I don't eat margarine after I heard that. Really gross. Surprisingly too, fats are not always oils or butter. Avocados are very high in fat. But the thing is, our body needs fat. And so avocados are high in fat, but it's the good fat that we need. So these are energy storage molecules that we require. Ms. Thomas, if there's anything that you want to add here, please feel free and go ahead and pause me and then let me go on when you're ready, okay? Okay, so all of these types of energy storage molecules are broken down by the body and they are used to release energy. Remember, starch, glucose, and fats. Remember from our articles that organisms use the energy they release from these molecules for reproduction and other activities. Remember, reproduction for the penguins involves a lot of travel, 50 miles one way. That's the distance from here to Lincoln, just for them to get some food to come back to feed their young. And remember, the salmon have to travel from the ocean uphill, essentially, upstream, over waterfalls to get back to their original river that they were born in. So lots and lots of energy storage molecules being used in order to do those activities. Okay, I'm so excited. I absolutely love this experiment. This is, I keep telling you guys, this is one of my very favorite Amplify experiments. This is called a yeast experiment. I'm going to take you through it and then I'm going to demonstrate a couple things. And then Miss Thomas, I'm going to have you pause me and then let the kids go ahead and go to work. All right, so you are going to be working with your table partner to do an experiment to test the effect of sugar, which you guys know is glucose. It's an energy storage molecule on living organisms known as yeast. Now, yeast is, just a second, let me grab it. You guys are going to see on your tray, I'm going to stop sharing here for 1 second. Okay, so on your tray, you're going to have this cup that's full of yeast. And if I bring it close to you, you guys will be able to see the individual grains. They almost look like grains of sand, right? But yeast, the interesting thing is yeast is a living organism. It doesn't look alive here. This yeast is actually 2 years old, believe it or not. Here's the crazy thing. It's encased in this shell and it helps the yeast kind of remain dormant for a while. And it isn't until the conditions are totally right that the yeast will grow. So this is your yeast, okay? I'm gonna take this time right now, Miss Thomas, and I'm gonna make sure that the kids are ready for the lab, all right? So we're gonna go through a checklist. Make sure that you are ready. Girls, if you have long hair, it needs to be pulled back. If you don't have a ponytail holder, then ask a friend if they do. If they don't have one, then just pull it back and kind of tuck it in your shirt. If you have your backpacks out in the area, like in the aisles, we have to put those away. So go ahead and put your backpacks on the back of your chair, or preferably go ahead and put them up front here underneath the whiteboard. And the last thing I need you to do is I need you to take the dividers off the table, but listen carefully. I do not want you to put the dividers on the floor because then you've just created a block in the I was going to say hallways, in the aisles. That's not good. Take your dividers. You can put them on a table if nobody is sitting there. You can also place them on the cupboard, on the counters, on the side, or be back behind. Okay? So I'm going to give you guys a second to get yourselves ready for the lab. When you're ready, go ahead and play the video. Okay, so you guys are ready for a lab. I'm excited for you guys to do this one. Let me get it back on. All right. So when you guys are together with a partner, if you are at a table and you're totally by yourself and somebody else is at a table totally by yourself, you should probably get with another person. Listen, I think there is, I'm okay with you guys. Don't change table partners. If you've got somebody that's there, work with your table partner. Otherwise, let's go ahead and match people up who are at odd tables. Make sure that everybody's with a partner. Okay, so this is what you're going to get. One person will be ready or will be responsible for going over to the counter and getting the supplies. You will have a tray. On that tray, you're going to see, oh, look here. I just happen to have a tray with all my supplies on it. Oh, crazy. Let me show you what you get. You're going to have a cup of yeast and a cup of sugar. Remember, the sugar is our ESM, energy storage molecule. We've got yeast, we've got sugar. You'll also have 3 cups, and they are labeled A, B, and C. You will have spoons, measuring spoons. Some of you guys only have 2 spoons on your tray, and that's totally fine. I just was lazy and I didn't separate some of them. So the 2 spoons you guys are going to have is, let's see if you guys can see that. All right, you've got a 1 tablespoon and a 1 teaspoon. So this is the tablespoon, this is the teaspoon. Some of you guys are bakers, and so you know which one is which. But if you are not a baker, I want you guys to notice the tablespoon, this one right here, is abbreviated TBSP, and the teaspoon is just TSP. Can you see it? TSP. Good. All right, so 1 tablespoon, 1 teaspoon. And then you'll also have a graduated cylinder. And that's all that's on your tray. You're going to take your tray and go back to your spot to sit. And then you're going to come back up. And Miss Thomas is going to be over by the coffee pot. Miss Thomas, you're going to fill the water up just a little more than halfway. Okay, they'll need 120 milliliters total. And so I like to give them a little bit extra just in case, a little more than half, about right here, about 2/3 full. Okay, you guys don't go yet. I am going to go through the process, what you guys are going to do. How do I want to do that? I'm going to do it this way. Just a second. I'm going to show you the slides here, and then yeah, okay, that's what I'm going to do. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get your cups, and they are labeled A, B, and C. The independent variable is the amount of sugar that we're going to give our yeast. And remember, an independent variable is the one thing in an experiment that we change. Everything else stays the same. So in cup A, we're not going to put any sugar at all. In cup C, whoops, I'm sorry, in cup B, we're going to put just a little pinch. Please do not make a pinch like this. Like, you don't want a lot. When you go take a pinch, you're just going to take a little pinch and put it in there. Just a little pinch, okay? A little pinch of sugar. And then in cup C, you're going to use your teaspoon. That's the smallest one. And you're going to put a teaspoon of sugar in cup C. Then we're going to put some yeast in all 3 cups. We're going to put the same amount of yeast. You are going to use your large tablespoon to put 1 tablespoon of yeast in all 3 cups. You're going to add some warm water, and I'll tell you exactly how much in a minute. And then you're going to set the experiment aside for a while to give the yeast time to reproduce. you are going to be tempted to mess with it. Don't do it. While we are working on the other activity, you're going to want to mess with the stuff on your tray. Don't do it. Leave it alone. If you shake it, if you stir it, if you continue to mess with it, you're going to mess up the reaction and you're not going to see anything. Trust and believe you will see something that's really cool. Okay, so here is your yeast experiment setup. Mrs. Thomas, go ahead and stop the video and just let this stay on. It says place the following amounts of sugar in the cup. Remember, in cup A, no sugar. Cup B, 1 pinch of sugar. Cup C, 1 teaspoon of sugar. Then you're going to place 1 tablespoon of yeast into each cup. You're going to add 40 milliliters of warm water to each cup. Now, I want to show you and remind you, I'm going to get out of here real quick, how to measure your graduated cylinder. It's going to be difficult for me to show you how to do that. So Miss Thomas, would you please remind these kids how to measure by leaving that graduated cylinder flat, looking for the meniscus and measuring from the bottom of the meniscus. All right, I'm going to come back to that screen. You can pause me and go ahead and take a couple minutes to get your lab set up. Okay? All right, so you guys are probably finished by now. I haven't done mine yet, so I'm going to do mine real quick. Okay, you guys, I'm gonna have you stop what you're doing now, and hopefully everything is good. Please do not touch your cups. What I would do if I were you is just line them up on your tray so you can see A, B, C in order. And then just kind of push them off to the side or kind of in the corner, just wherever they're going to be out of the way. Do not stir them again. Don't touch them. Okay. All right. While we're waiting for that to react, I don't know why that just did that. Doggone. Hang on. Sorry, guys. Okay. While we're waiting for that to react, we're going to go back and do a second read of our reproduction energy article set. If you have your articles, go ahead and pull those out, please. And it'll be a little bit easier for you to find the answers. I'm going to let you guys go ahead and get those out, and you can start me again when you're ready. All right, so you've got your articles out. We're going to go back to lesson 2.2, and now we're in activity 3. So we're going to reread the same articles that we read a couple days ago. Just a reminder, scientists will often go back and read text several times in order to deepen their understanding. So we're going to do that. As we read, we're going to gather more information about where the population gets the energy storage molecules it needs to do all the activities required for reproduction. Listen to what I'm saying. We're going to find out where they get their ESMs. What I'm asking is, what's the resource population? Okay, so the first one that we're going to do is, whoops, let me go back. First one we're going to do, I'm going to go into Amplify and show you what we're doing here. Activity number 3 says second read reproduction energy article set. This is a little tricky, guys. If you look at this activity, look down below, see how it has 6 pages? You're going to skip page 1. We're going to go to page 2. And you can see right here, it should say second read sockeye salmon. So we're going to look back here and we're going to see if you don't have to look online. You guys have your paper copies. Scroll all the way down and you've got this box that has the question, where do sockeye salmon get the energy storage molecules they need to do the activities required for reproduction? So look through your articles. You and your table partner can work together. That's totally fine. Answer those questions. You are going to do that for page 2. Page 3 is going to talk about the emperor penguins. So again, scroll all the way down and answer the question. Oops, I've got the answer there. I don't want to tell you the answer. So you're going to do that for all of the 4 different, 4 or 5, we had 4 organisms. So you're going to do page 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Mrs. Thomas, go ahead and pause me. And when you're ready, go ahead and start it up again. But the kids can, I would say, depending on time, maybe 5, 10 minutes at most. And then go ahead and start me up again when you're ready to move on to the next activity. Okay. So I'm going to make sure that you guys have the answers that I have. We're going to just check those. Okay. So the sockeye salmon on page 2, you should have written they eat shrimp, squid, eels, and other fish. And I want you guys to identify that they say that the ESM is fat. So let's go ahead and make sure that we include that information too. Shrimp, squid, eels, and other fish. The emperor penguins, this is on page 3, they eat squid, small fish, and krill. And their ESM is fat as well. The fireflies on page 4, they eat insects, snails, and slugs. Again, ESM is fat. And the elephant seals on page 5, they eat fish, stingrays, small sharks, octopi, and crabs. Again, the ESM is fat. All right, I've got a couple more vocabulary words for you. Go ahead and go into GoodNotes, go to your vocabulary notebook, and add consumer population. Consumer population is a population that eats organisms from another population. You guys are familiar with this term, predator. Amplify does not use that term. They use consumer population. So I included it there to help you kind of make a connection, but we're not going to use the word predator. We're going to use consumer population. Go ahead and write that definition down. Okay. Then the second definition is resource population. Your resource population is the population that is eaten by organisms from another population. And again, you're used to this being called the prey. We won't call it that. We won't refer to it as that. It'll be the resource population. So go ahead and write that definition down, please. All right. We have two more key concepts. We're going to do key concept number 6 right now. So go ahead and open up your key concept notebooks. And we are going to write in key concept number 6. Now, I underlined consumer populations. I want you again, before you just start writing things down, let's really think about what we're saying here. Key concept number 6 says, organisms in consumer populations get ESMs from eating organisms in resource populations. That totally makes sense. Basically, what I'm saying here is the predator gets the energy from the prey. That makes sense. So go ahead and let's write down the key concept number 6. Organisms in consumer populations get ESMs from eating organisms in resource populations. All right, it's time to go back to our yeast experiment. And I am sure by now you guys are kind of freaking out a little bit about your yeast and how it's reacting. I'm hoping that you have some really good reactions. Let me show you here. Oh, where did that go? Oh, there's mine. So this was one that I did, actually a student did it in 4th period. And I'm hoping that your results are similar. So we have the yeast in cup A that had no sugar. We had the yeast in cup B that had just a little pinch of sugar. And we had the yeast in cup C that had a tablespoon of sugar. A couple of things I want you guys to discuss amongst yourself. Ms. Thomas will help guide the discussion. I want to know, hang on. Ooh, here we go. I want to know which cup of yeast showed evidence of releasing the most energy. And I want to know which cup of yeast most likely reproduced the most. And make sure that you all are explaining your answers. Remember, when you answer a question, you're making a claim. And you need to remember, you need to use detailed observations to provide strong evidence. So don't make a claim and then just leave it. Give detailed observations. Why do you think that? Let's use some evidence from our lab, okay? Go ahead and stop the video and start it up again when you're ready. Okay, so hopefully you guys had a good discussion and you discovered that cup C, cup C was the one where there was the most activity and it showed evidence of releasing the most energy. You may have made some observations, like did you notice the bubbles? And did you notice the size of the bubbles? Like in cup A, your bubbles, I'm going to use mine. I didn't let mine go as long as you did, but here's what I have for cup A. And if you can see the bubbles in cup A, remember these didn't have any sugar at all. And so there's definitely some energy being released, and I can tell because there's some bubbles here. And I'm going to talk about those bubbles in a minute, but they're very small, okay? And they're very close together. And the liquid itself is kind of dense. It's kind of foamy. It's really thick. When I compare that to B, it's a little bigger in B, not a lot, but a little. But here's the interesting thing. If I start looking at these bubbles, I can tell these bubbles are a little bigger. There's a little bit more energy being released here. Now, I only let my experiment go for about 5 minutes. You guys went a little bit longer than I did. So my A cup is not as dramatic as yours, but I do want to show you the comparison. Look at the bubbles between the two. Look at that. That's pretty amazing. Lots more bubbles. And not only lot more bubbles, but look at how big they are. Pretty crazy. And so the cup of yeast that most likely reproduce the most, of course, is C. And I'm hoping that you guys use the evidence that because we added more sugar to cup C, it had more ESMs. See, we're using reasoning. We're using our evidence to support our claim. The evidence is we added more sugar to cup C. We see more bubbles. And we can make some inferences and say, well, maybe because we added more sugar, there was more energy available to the yeast. And so they were able to eat more, they reproduced more. Well, here's the thing. The yeast in cup C appeared to grow the most because they produced the most bubbles. The bubbles are carbon dioxide from a process called cellular respiration. And I know a lot of you guys remember the phrase cellular respiration from 6th grade. You guys talked about cellular respiration. And that releases energy. So because we saw bubbles, we know that the yeast released energy, but we can't see the yeast. See, we can see what the yeast did, but we can't actually see the yeast. So we really don't have the evidence yet that they reproduced. Unfortunately, the bubbles aren't the yeast reproducing. I do have some evidence for you. Take a look at this. So this image was taken through a microscope. Remember, I told you yeast is a single cell organism. They're microscopic, very, very small, and it shows the yeast reproducing. So here's the deal. Each one of these circles is one yeast, okay? Yeast reproduces asexually, meaning that there are not a male and a female yeast, but there's only one yeast, and it will reproduce itself. So it copies its own DNA and it makes a duplicate copy of itself. So there are lots of different ways that organisms reproduce asexually. One of them is called budding, and that's what yeast does. So do you see this little small yeast that's coming off of this one? That's called a bud. And all of these little buds on these individual yeast cells, will eventually grow and turn into this yeast, and it will get bigger until it breaks off, it becomes its own cell. So when that uses the energy, they release carbon dioxide, which is how I know, ooh, look at my bubbles are getting bigger. So this is how I know that there's some activity. They are doing some work in here. They're reproducing. So scientists have observed that when yeast get more energy storage molecules like sugar, they can make more buds. And that means they reproduce more. Yay! Key concept number 7. So key concept number 7 is exactly what we just said. The more energy storage molecules available to a population, the more organisms in that population, the more the organisms in that population can reproduce. Let me ask you really quickly while you guys are thinking about this. Remember when we had all those snails in Poppy's tank? Why did I have so many snails? Yes, Poppy wasn't eating them, but think about the number of births. that tank was so dirty, there were a lot of energy storage molecules available to the snails. They were able to eat more. Remember, snails reproduce asexually. The more they eat, the more they're going to reproduce. And that's what happened. So I'm going to give you guys a second to write down this key concept. All right, key concept number 7 is done and over. Let's go ahead and reset the lab. Here's what I'd like you to do. First of all, Ms. Thomas, if you have time, have them do this. If you don't have time, leave it on the table and I can take care of it, okay? So if you don't have time, fast forward me a little bit and we'll move on. So reset the lab. First of all, I need you guys to make sure that you leave the sugar, yeast, measuring spoons, graduated cylinders on the trays. Okay, leave those alone. I'll take care of those, put all my supplies away. You can put the trays back on the counter. And I want you to carefully empty the liquid from cups A, B, and C in the sink. Turn on the water, let the water run. Do not let that yeast just sit in my sink. It gets gross. It's gotta keep moving. So rinse out your cups, dump all that down the sink, let it run. Will you guys please be careful? I think I've had like 2 or 3 people lose their wooden sticks down my drain. Please don't do that. Throw your sticks away before you rinse out your cups. And then throw the cups away and throw your stir sticks away and you guys are good. Go ahead and get that taken care of. I've got one more thing I want to talk to you about. Okay, just a reminder that you do have homework for me. Make sure that when you guys come in, you go back to your digital resources, you watch the video. If you guys have time in class right now, do it right now. Then you don't have any homework at all. You're going to watch the video. It's just a couple-minute video about an experiment in which scientists gave crickets different amounts of sugar and then observed the effects of the crickets' reproduction. Make sure that you go back then into Amplify and you've got 2 questions I think that you're going to answer. Make sure that you hit hand in at the bottom because I'm going to go into Amplify to grade these. Look at my eyes. Do not try and turn them into Schoology. That's not going to work. Get it done in Amplify. I'll go into Amplify and take a look at it, okay? You guys did an awesome job. I really appreciate you being flexible with me. I will see you this afternoon. So if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to come in during guided study. Talk to you later. Bye.